Chosen one. Have you ever wondered why certain people seemed determined to forget you, overlook you, dismiss you, or even deny your existence like you were never meant to matter in the first place? Like somehow you were an extra in a scene you were destined to lead. Let's talk about why that happened, because what you're feeling isn't paranoia. It's not in your imagination. It's spiritual reality pressing against your earthly experience. They didn't just forget you. They tried to erase you. Not accidentally, not passively. It was intentional, strategic, because they saw something in you, long before you even saw it in yourself. Chosen one, before you even understood the depth of your calling, others felt it. Before you ever spoke a word in your authority, they were already trying to silence your presence. That's not coincidence. That's warfare. And it began early, maybe even before your first memory. You see, when God ordains a soul to carry divine light, that soul enters the world with a vibration, an energy signature that disturbs darkness without effort. You didn't have to do anything loud to be labeled too much. You didn't have to fight to be feared. Just being was enough. Your mere existence activated ancient insecurities in people who were never meant to handle your presence. And so, the plan began to erase your importance, to delete your contribution, to silence your knowing, to push you to the background of your own life. But here's the divine irony. You were always the main character. The world may have cast you as extra, outlier, or problem. But heaven never removed your name from the scroll. You were written into this timeline with bold ink and sacred purpose. And no manipulation can remove what God has authored. Before we dive deep into this message, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Because this isn't just content. It's a divine confirmation for the chosen ones who've been told they don't belong in their own story. Let's be clear, people didn't misunderstand you by accident. They felt the vibration you walked in and knew they couldn't control it. So the only way they could maintain their illusion of power was to try and diminish yours. That's why it started in childhood. You were marked before you had language. You were misread before you had clarity. You were silenced in classrooms where you saw too much. You were mocked in friendships where your light couldn't be dimmed. You were betrayed by people who pretended to love you, but secretly resented your reflection. This wasn't just about jealousy, it was about survival for them. Because your rise exposed the cracks in their counterfeit reality. Your truth disturbed their comfort zones. Your presence brought accountability they weren't ready for. So they labeled you difficult, too sensitive, too deep, too intense, too different. Anything but what you really were, divinely anointed. And that labeling wasn't random. It was a tactic. Because once someone can redefine you, they can control how others perceive you and even how you perceive yourself. That's the dangerous part. They weren't just trying to influence how they saw you. They were trying to get you to forget who you are. And for a while, it worked, didn't it? You shrunk yourself. You questioned your own brilliance. You denied your knowing. You tried to become invisible just to feel safe. But your spirit refused to die, because it's not built to be erased. The anointing on your life is not fragile. It's not dependent on popularity. It doesn't bend to approval. It doesn't fade under pressure. In fact, it gets louder in silence and stronger in solitude. So even when they tried to delete you from the picture, God kept your spirit sharp. Even when they rewrote the scene to center themselves, the divine narrative kept looping back to you. There's a reason you never fit their mold. You weren't made to follow their format. You're not from the same script. You carry a heavenly frequency that was never meant to be edited, trimmed, or cropped out. And no matter how many people tried to snatch the pen from God's hand, He never stopped writing your story. You see, the chosen ones walk through fire, not just for purification, but for revelation. And what was revealed in you was too potent to be contained by man's manipulation. That's why you were overlooked in relationships. Why you were betrayed in circles you trusted. Why you were pushed aside in rooms you helped build. Because your presence wasn't just noticeable, it was undeniable, and yet they tried to deny it. They gaslit you into second-guessing your own role, made you feel like a supporting act in a play you were born to lead. But chosen one, heaven never forgot the script. God saw every tear cried in isolation. He witnessed every moment you were ignored, misread, or belittled. And He never stopped preparing your spotlight. The time in the shadows wasn't a setback, it was sacred. Because what they didn't know was this: every attempt to erase you just trained your discernment. Every betrayal just sharpened your vision. Every rejection just built your resilience. You weren't being erased, you were being etched into eternity. And now that you're awakening, you feel it, don't you? The energy is shifting. Your memory is returning. The veil is lifting, and you can finally see the truth. You were always chosen. You were always central. You were always meant to be seen, but not by everyone. Not by those who needed you small to feel safe. Not by those who required your silence to dominate the space. Not by those who feared your light because it exposed their shadows. No. You were meant to be seen by the remnant. The ones who can recognize your frequency without explanation. The ones who are activated by your truth, not threatened by it. So if you're hearing this now, understand. This message didn't find you by chance. It's a divine echo, a spiritual recall, a holy memo reminding you. You were never forgotten. You were never erased. You were simply being refined. And now, you're being revealed. You were born with the codes, born with the truth, born with the light. And no amount of darkness can override the divine signature written on your soul. So yes, they tried to erase you, but you were authored by the Most High, and heaven never uses whiteout. Chosen one, let's go deeper. Because now that you remember they tried to erase you, we need to talk about the divine strategy behind your hiddenness. Yes, hiddenness. Because you weren't actually erased. You were concealed, sheltered, pulled back for a season, not because you were forgotten, but because you were being fortified. Let this sink in. You were hidden, not forgotten. The years where you felt invisible, they weren't punishment, and they were protection. The silence sacred, the obscurity ordained, the delay designed. Because what you carry can't be prematurely exposed. Your light is not a flicker, it's a fire. And if fire is released too early, it can burn what it's meant to bless. So the divine kept you covered, not to keep you out, but to build you up. Not to limit you, but to ground you. You weren't behind. You were being built in the background, and I know it hurt. I know it felt like God had skipped over you. While others were promoted, seen, celebrated, called forward, you waited and wondered if maybe they were right. Maybe you were just too much. Maybe your voice was too raw. Maybe your presence was too intense. Maybe you didn't belong in the spotlight. But chosen one, listen closely. The very fact that your light didn't blend into the crowd is proof you were never designed to blend in. You were marked, set apart, hidden, yes, but only to be revealed on divine timing. Because some gifts require depth before they're displayed. Some oil must be pressed in private before it's poured in public, and that's what was happening to you. While the world saw your stillness as stagnation, heaven saw it as strategy. Let me tell you what was really happening during your hidden years. Your discernment was sharpening. Your spirit was maturing. Your intuition was being refined. Your roots were going deep. Because what's the point of rising quickly if you collapse under the weight of your calling? You needed more than a platform. You needed spiritual infrastructure. So God let you walk alone. He let you feel misunderstood. He allowed the rejection to sting. Why? So you could develop immunity to counterfeit affirmation. So when the false praise comes later, it won't move you. So when the crowd shifts from cheers to silence, you'll remain steady. You see, your hiddenness wasn't just about preparing you for the world. It was about preparing you to remain yourself in front of the world. Because many are revealed too soon, and the applause poisons them. The stage consumes them. The validation manipulates them, but not you. You were made to endure the silence so you wouldn't be seduced by the noise. And every moment you felt overlooked, heaven was watching. Every time you felt uninvited, heaven was preparing a table. Every time you questioned your worth, heaven whispered, "Not yet, but soon." Because God doesn't do grand reveals without first doing deep excavations. And chosen one, the depth in you is not normal. You feel more. You notice more. You intuit before others comprehend. You see what others are blind to. And that used to feel like a curse, didn't it? But it's not. It's part of your sacred wiring. You were built to sense what hasn't been spoken, to know without needing proof, to read the energy in a room before words are exchanged. And for years, that made you feel crazy, because no one affirmed your knowing. No one validated your frequency. No one acknowledged your spiritual radar. Instead, they told you to stop being dramatic, stop overthinking, stop being sensitive. But you weren't overreacting. You were discerning. And now, as you reclaim your story, you must also reclaim your silence. Not as weakness, but as wisdom. Because it was in the silence that you found your strength. While they were out chasing applause, you were tuning your inner compass. While they were building platforms, you were cultivating presence. While they were chasing status, you were deepening spirit. And now, the season of hiding is lifting. You can feel it, can't you? The urgency in your soul, the clarity in your steps, the call on your name. It's not a coincidence. It's a recall. Heaven is summoning you back to the center of the story because it's time. Time to remember that you were never missing. Time to remember that you didn't fail. Time to know that what they tried to bury was actually being rooted, and now the roots are ready to break through the soil. So don't resent the years you felt invisible. Don't regret the moments you felt ignored, because those were the very seasons where your power was forged. And what's about to emerge from you isn't just a comeback, it's a coronation. You're not returning to take a place at someone else's table. You're returning to build the table, to lead, to speak, to embody what others only talk about. Because while you were hidden, God was forming your voice. God was clarifying your vision. God was anchoring your spirit. And now, no one can unsee what heaven has revealed. No one can unhear what God has spoken over you. They tried to erase you, but God covered you. They tried to forget you, but the divine recorded every moment. So the next time someone says you came out of nowhere, let them say it. They don't need to know how long you've been preparing. They don't need to see the tears you cried in silence. They don't need to understand the fire you've walked through. Because this next chapter is not about explaining, it's about embodying. Your life will speak what your mouth doesn't have to. Your frequency will declare what your history confirms. Your presence will validate what others once tried to deny. So stand tall, chosen one. You've been hidden long enough. And now, it's time for the unveiling. Chosen one. Now that you understand your hiddenness was divine strategy, let's talk about one of the most misunderstood parts of your journey, your silence. Because when they couldn't erase you completely, they tried to redefine you. When they couldn't block your destiny, they tried to confuse your identity. And one of the biggest weapons they used against you was your own quietness. You've always known when to speak and when not to. You've sensed when the room wasn't ready for the truth you carry. You've walked away from arguments others were begging you to enter. You've held your tongue when you could have exposed, exploded, or corrected, but they mistook your silence as surrender. They saw your restraint as weakness. They assumed you had nothing to say because they couldn't hear your voice. What they didn't realize was that your silence was a weapon of wisdom, a shield forged from discernment, a barrier of spiritual intelligence. Chosen one, your silence was never empty, it was full of awareness. You've always had the ability to perceive what others miss. You can feel when energy shifts. You can sense dishonesty without evidence. You can pick up what's not being said louder than what is. And because of that, you don't waste your words. Not everyone deserves access to your voice. Not every situation warrants your reaction. Not every offense requires your explanation. This is something only the chosen ones truly understand. Silence isn't retreat. It's spiritual positioning. When you're silent, you're not absent. You're observing, calculating, aligning, listening with your spirit, not just your ears. And when the time is right, you do speak. And when you speak, it lands with power. It penetrates. It convicts. It breaks illusions, because your voice carries frequency, not just sound. And that frequency is disruptive to anything false, manipulative, or spiritually dead. That's why they fear your voice. It's why people try to bait you into arguments. Why they get uncomfortable when you don't react. Why they try to provoke you, test you, or question you because your silence makes them confront themselves. You reflect their shadows without saying a word. And that's why they tried to mislabel you. They said you were arrogant, detached, cold, emotionless. But chosen one, that wasn't the truth. That was projection. They couldn't handle your self-possession. They didn't understand the spiritual authority you carry. They resented the fact that you didn't need to defend yourself to feel powerful, because silence is power when used by the anointed. Silence dismantles confusion. It forces the spiritually blind to confront their discomfort. It exposes manipulation. It highlights desperation. It reveals imbalance. Your stillness becomes a mirror, and many people don't like what they see in it. So rather than sit with themselves, they attacked you. Rather than do the inner work, they discredited your calm. Rather than ask why your peace disturbed them, they labeled you off. But their reactions were never about you. They were reacting to what your presence stirred in their unhealed places. You don't walk in emotional chaos. You walk in spiritual equilibrium. And that kind of stability threatens people who are addicted to noise. You carry a calm they can't manufacture, a quiet strength they can't imitate, a depth they can't distract themselves from. And that's why your silence isn't just a personality trait. It's part of your spiritual arsenal. In this world, everyone's shouting. Everyone wants to be seen. Everyone's trying to dominate the room. But you don't move like that. You don't compete. You consecrate. You enter a space and shift it, even when you don't say a word. Because the spirit within you is louder than the words around you. You've probably noticed it. You walk into a room, and the atmosphere changes. People either draw near or get defensive. They either soften or they scatter. Why? Because your frequency is unmistakable. Your silence speaks in languages the spirit realm understands. It calls angels to attention. It unsettles demons hiding in smiles. It makes darkness nervous. That's why the enemy tried so hard to make you speak when you were supposed to stay quiet. To argue when you were supposed to walk away. To defend yourself in spaces you were meant to exit. Because if he can't steal your power, he'll try to distract you from it. He'll try to bait you into exchanges that drain your energy. He'll try to lure you into proving yourself when you were never called to explain yourself. But chosen one, you don't owe anyone an explanation for walking in wisdom. Let them think you're silent because you're unsure. Let them assume you're quiet because you're weak. Let them believe your stillness means surrender. They don't know that your silence is sacred strategy. They don't know that heaven taught you when to speak and when to wait. They don't know that every moment you hold your peace, your spirit grows stronger. And when you do speak, it's not random, it's revelation. You don't talk to fill space. You speak to shift atmospheres. You declare. You affirm. You release spiritual weight with every word. Because you're not here to impress, you're here to impact. And sometimes the most powerful impact comes through quiet knowing. So chosen one, never let the world guilt you for your stillness. Never let noisy people make you question your quiet strength. Never let the pressure to perform distract you from your posture of peace. Your silence has kept you safe. It's guarded your spirit. It's trained your discernment. It's protected your power. And now, you walk in a frequency the world cannot decode. You are not silent because you're confused. You are silent because you know too much to speak prematurely. And that, chosen one, is what they fear most. Because when you finally do open your mouth, it won't just be words, it'll be truth wrapped in divine fire. And everything false will tremble. Chosen one, now that you understand the sacredness of your silence, it's time to confront another truth you cannot be written out of a story that God authored. For every time someone overlooked you, for every space where your name was left off the list, for every narrative you were intentionally excluded from, know this: the rewrite can't omit you. They tried. Oh, they tried. They built the storyline without you. They acted as if you weren't part of the origin. They recounted events you were present for as if you weren't even in the room. They created group chats without you, wrote histories you lived through, crafted testimonies that omitted your presence. And maybe, for a while, it worked. Maybe you even began to question your own memory. Did I matter? Was I really part of that? Did they just forget? Or did they want to? The answer, chosen one, is clear. It wasn't forgetfulness, it was intentional exclusion. Because your presence carried too much truth. Your witness was too authentic. Your frequency disrupted their fiction, so they edited you out. But heaven didn't, and the truth always returns. The divine blueprint cannot be rewritten by those who lack the authority to even understand it. You are a living line in the sacred scroll of this timeline. You are written into the story in invisible ink, only discerned by those with spiritual eyes. And just because they couldn't read it, doesn't mean it wasn't there. In fact, let's be honest, you were the foundation they built on. They used your ideas, your energy, your prayers, your light, then tried to cut you out when the fruit began to grow. They wanted the harvest without honoring the seed. But what they forgot is this: God watches the soil. He sees who planted in silence. He sees who watered in tears. He sees who sacrificed behind the scenes while others collected the praise. And he's not just watching, he's vindicating. Because every divine assignment includes moments of betrayal, distortion, and theft. Even Jesus was betrayed with a kiss. Even Joseph was thrown in a pit by his own brothers. So don't be surprised that you were cut out of conversations you should have been leading, that your name was whispered in envy instead of shouted in honor, that your presence was ignored in spaces you helped create, that others rose on the back of your labor while you were left behind. It hurts, I know, but the betrayal was never greater than the blueprint. They thought by removing you from the narrative, they could remove your impact, but you can't delete a vibration. You can't erase a frequency. You can't cancel what was carved into the spirit realm before time began. Chosen one, hear this clearly. You were always part of the plan, even when others pretended you weren't. Even when you were treated like a footnote. Even when your contributions were minimized, mocked, or misrepresented. The rewrite doesn't stick when heaven already stamped the original. You don't need to demand recognition. You don't need to chase acknowledgement. You don't need to defend your truth, because truth echoes. It reverberates. It finds its way back to center every time. And when it does, the ones who tried to erase you will have to watch as your name returns to the forefront, not by force, but by divine inevitability. You were hidden to be healed. You were silenced to be sharpened. You were left out to be lifted up in front of the very eyes that tried to keep you down. This isn't just about justice. It's about divine order. God is a master storyteller. He never misses a detail. He never forgets a character. He doesn't need your enemies to validate your placement. He's the author and the finisher. And if you were written into the beginning, you're essential to the ending. So stop asking why they don't acknowledge you. Stop seeking closure from people who never understood your worth. Stop replaying memories, hoping one day they'll come back and say, "We were wrong." Because even if they don't, God already did. He already reversed the lie. He already redeemed the timeline. He already recentered you. And now, the spotlight isn't just coming, it's returning to where it always belonged, to the one who carried the truth while others played with illusions, to the one who stayed silent while others boasted, to the one who loved purely while others manipulated presence for power. You were never optional. You were never accidental. You were never removable. You are essential. And this new chapter being written, it won't need your enemy's approval. It won't be based on popularity. It won't depend on anyone else's permission. This next season is authored by the same one who whispered your name in the womb. And he says, "Come forward. Take your place. The narrative belongs to you now, so let them pretend. Let them keep the fake version of the story, because the real story is about to be lived in front of them. And it won't need words, it will be undeniable. Your existence will be the testimony. Your alignment will be the vindication. Your rise will be the restoration. Chosen one. They tried to erase you from the story. But what they didn't know is that you are the story. Without your presence, it never would have moved forward. Without your light, they wouldn't have found the path. Without your obedience, the door would have stayed closed. And now, the door is wide open. Walk through it. Not with resentment, but with remembrance. Because everything they tried to omit, heaven is about to highlight. Chosen one. Now that you know the truth cannot be rewritten without you. It's time to talk about why the story could never progress without you. And that's because you carry the sacred blueprint. Yes, you're not just part of the plan. You are the plan, the codes, the frequency, the alignment. It's written in you. etched into your spirit, woven into your DNA. You were never meant to follow their scripts. You were designed to reveal the divine design long forgotten, buried by time, obscured by ego and fear. And that's exactly why you've been resisted, ridiculed, and rejected. Because those who follow the world's programming can't comprehend what heaven encoded in you. You were born carrying sacred architecture codes from realms unseen. You sense patterns that others dismiss. You connect dots no one else even notices. You feel vibrations that are older than your body, older than this world. Because you are an awakener, you don't just exist in this timeline. You shift it. You break the illusion. You interrupt cycles. You disarm generational patterns that were set in motion before you were born. That's why your presence makes people uncomfortable. That's why they try to copy you but can't match your frequency. That's why even when they steal your words, they can't replicate your energy. Because you're not performing, you're embodying. And embodiment cannot be faked. You are walking divine instruction. Not because you're perfect, but because you're aligned. You move in purpose. You speak from presence. You see through illusion and that vision. That clarity, that knowing, it's sacred. They don't understand how you see what you see. They don't understand how you know what you know. They don't understand how you keep rising after every attempt to break you. But it's because you're not operating from here. Your instructions are coming from there. Your source isn't human, it's holy. You carry the original design, not the watered-down version, not the performance-driven imitation, but the unfiltered, divine frequency heaven placed in you before you had language. And that's why life has felt so heavy. Why you've been tested so early. Why your battles have been relentless. Because the enemy fights hardest against the ones who carry the map. You don't just believe in purpose. You are the activation point for others. Your presence alone triggers awakening. Your words unlock memories in others' souls. Your spirit calls forth the anointing buried under years of trauma and suppression. And most of the time, you don't even mean to. That's the beauty and the burden of being encoded. You don't need a pulpit to preach. You don't need a stage to shift atmospheres. You don't need approval to carry truth. It's already in you. And that's exactly why they tried to redirect you. Why they told you to tone it down. Why they said you were doing too much. Why they claimed you were too deep, too different, too intense. Because you didn't fit their format. You didn't obey their emotional choreography. You didn't flatter their egos. You didn't need their validation to feel whole. You weren't there to follow the program. You were there to restore the original design. And the original design is spiritual sovereignty. You are not here to be controlled. You're not here to shrink into systems. You're not here to bow to structures that don't honor your spirit. You're here to walk in full divine authority, and you feel it rising in you, don't you? That pull to stop hiding. That desire to speak louder, even when your voice shakes. That fire in your chest that says, enough. I will no longer dim this light. That's your blueprint activating. That's the code waking up. Because we are in a season of remnant awakening, and the ones who carry the real codes are being summoned forward. And you're one of them. You've always been. Even when you forgot. Even when you doubted. Even when you tried to play small. The sacred imprint never left. It's why you felt out of place your entire life. Why you've struggled to connect with surface-level environments. Why relationships ended when you started walking in truth. Why people were drawn to your light, but hated the mirror it held up. Because you remind people of what they've abandoned in themselves. Your walk exposes the gap between who they are and who they could be. Your authenticity challenges their performative identity. Your spiritual alignment makes their religious routine feel hollow, and instead of rising with you, many chose to remove you. But they couldn't remove your blueprint, because it's not just what you have, it's who you are. You are the temple and the scroll, the map and the messenger, the carrier and the code, and your life is the proof. You've made it through too much to be ordinary. You've survived too much to stay silent. You've overcome too much to pretend you're just one of them. You're not. You're chosen, anointed, awakened. And that comes with responsibility, to speak when others are silent, to walk in clarity when others choose confusion, to lead by example, even when it's uncomfortable, because you weren't meant to copy their code. You were born to restore the divine one. So, chosen one, stop trying to fit into systems that weren't designed for your spirit. Stop asking people to recognize a blueprint they were never meant to understand. Stop giving explanations to people who can't even comprehend your frequency. You carry the original plan, and the original plan is returning. The age of illusions is collapsing. False light is flickering. Performative spirituality is being exposed, and only the ones who carry the real codes will remain standing. You're not ahead of your time. You're exactly on time. So stand in your truth. Speak your knowing. Walk like you're encoded because you are. Heaven placed something inside you that must be revealed in this lifetime. And no matter who tried to edit you out, the story can't move forward without the one who carries the map. Chosen one. Now that you've reclaimed your blueprint, there's something you must know with full conviction. Your return was always prophesied. Yes. The very moment they turned their backs, the second they shut the door, the day they laughed and said you'd never come back from it, was the same moment heaven said, just wait, because this story, your story, was never over. In fact, it was never even paused. It was prophetic in motion. You were being positioned in divine silence, and now that silence is breaking. They called it a fall. Heaven called it formation. They called it a breakdown. Heaven called it rebirth. And here you are, rising from the very place they left you buried. Because the truth is, you were never actually gone, just hidden in the secret place, just being refined in obscurity, just sitting in divine timing while others rushed ahead. And now that it's your moment, the atmosphere is shifting. It feels like people are suddenly noticing you, like things are moving faster. Opportunities appearing out of nowhere. Doors opening that had long been sealed. But this isn't sudden, it's scheduled. You were always meant to reemerge. Always meant to walk back into the room with more clarity, more weight, more truth. Always meant to reclaim your place not with arrogance, but with authority. They didn't see it coming, because they mistook your retreat as defeat. They thought your quiet season meant you'd been broken. They assumed their rejection was your end. But you were in spiritual preparation, not retreating, realigning, not giving up, gathering strength. Because before elevation comes consecration. Before restoration comes revelation. Before destiny manifests, the vessel must be made ready. And now you are. You've done the work. You've cried the tears. You've let go of the identities that were forced on you. You've died to ego, surrendered the need for control, laid it all bare, and what's rising in you now is real. This isn't a comeback fueled by revenge. This isn't about proving anyone wrong. This is a return rooted in purpose, because chosen one, you never needed to prove them wrong. You just needed to become who you were always meant to be. And now that you are, the world will have no choice but to take notice, because you don't return like everyone else. When you rise, you carry presence. When you speak, You activate rooms. When you move, you awaken timelines. Because your return isn't just a personal win, it's a divine signal to those who are watching silently, to those who are questioning their own timeline, to those who wonder if it's too late or if they've missed their chance. Your return says it's not too late. You haven't been forgotten. The story is still unfolding. You're not just coming back, you're calling others home. Your restoration is communal. Your testimony is contagious. Your alignment ripples across generations. That's why you had to be hidden so long. Because when your return comes, it changes everything. It shifts perceptions. It breaks false narratives. It exposes the fake and exalts the faithful. And chosen one, the most powerful thing about your return is this. You don't need them to make room for you anymore. You are the room. You carry the table. You host the conversation, and the energy that once resisted you now reveals itself. You'll start to see it. The same people who dismissed you now admire you. The ones who mocked you now mimic you. The ones who erased you now echo your words. But this time, you won't shrink to accommodate them, because this return is not just a moment, it's a movement. You're not returning to fit in. You're returning to take up space, to own your anointing, to walk in the fullness of your assignment, not with bitterness, but with boldness, not with anger, but with authority, not with ego, but with essence, because the ones who carry the sacred blueprint always return. It's written in their soul. It's etched into their path. It's been prophesied since before time. You may not have known it, but every trial, every silence, every setback, every betrayal, it was all part of the return. And now, every step you take confirms the prophecy. You were born for this moment, born to rise, born to be seen in your fullness, born to activate what has been dormant, born to shine where others only survive. So, chosen one, walk boldly, speak freely, move intentionally, because your return is not for applause, it's for alignment. And those who tried to bury your light, they'll have no choice but to watch you become the fire. You are not who you were when they left you. You are more refined, more clear, more spiritually dangerous to darkness, and nothing will stop the prophecy from unfolding, because it's not just a comeback. It's a divine confirmation. You didn't lose your purpose. You were being recalibrated for impact. And now you're back, not to prove them wrong, but to prove God right. Chosen one, take a deep breath. Let it all settle in. You've walked through the fire. You've survived the silence. You've endured the rewriting of your story, the theft of your voice, the betrayal of those you once trusted. And now, you stand, unshaken, unbothered, unapologetically awake. It's time to declare this boldly and without hesitation. You were always the main character. This was never their story to control, never their narrative to edit, never their scene to lead. Because before they saw you as too much, before they tried to erase you, before the world called you strange, broken, or rebellious, heaven had already spoken your name into the atmosphere. And that name, it came with weight, with power, with a mission. Chosen one, this entire time while they tried to minimize you, your spirit refused to bow. You've been walking in a different frequency from the start. And that frequency, it was never designed for crowd approval. It was designed for divine assignment. This world was never built to celebrate those who carry light, because light exposes what darkness wants to keep hidden. That's why people turned on you. That's why you never quite fit in. That's why your relationships often started with fascination and ended in betrayal. Because your light reveals truth. and truth disrupts comfort. And people who live in illusions don't like disruption, but still, you remained. Still, you kept your integrity. Still, you chose authenticity over acceptance. Still, you carried your calling, even when it was heavy, even when it cost you everything. That's why this moment matters so much, because now you know. You know that being left out wasn't rejection, it was redirection. You know that being hidden wasn't punishment, it was protection. You know that being silenced wasn't defeat, it was training. And most of all, you know you were always central to the story. Every twist in your life, every battle, every lonely season, it all led back here, to this knowing, this reclaiming, this activation. You are not an extra in someone else's script. You are the reason the scene makes sense. You are the light that pulls the plot forward. You are the key that unlocks the ending. And what once looked like a detour, it was actually the design. Chosen one. Your story is divine literature. It's written in a different ink. It flows on a different frequency. It's guided by a higher author, and that author is turning the page. This next chapter is not about proving yourself. It's not about explaining your journey. It's about living in your truth so loudly, so clearly, so unapologetically, that your life becomes the only response necessary. You don't need to convince them. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You don't even need to defend your light anymore. Because now you know you are not for everyone. You were never supposed to be. You're for the remnant, the misfits, the misunderstood, the spiritually sensitive, the ones like you who feel the frequencies others ignore. You're here for them, to lead, to reflect, to remind them who they are. That's why you couldn't stay in the background. That's why heaven kept pulling you forward, even when you tried to hide. That's why the spotlight kept finding you, because you are the light. And from this day forward, let there be no more shrinking, no more doubting your voice, no more apologizing for your knowing, no more asking small minds to understand divine assignments. You are the main character. You always have been. And now, the stage is yours. Walk in, own it, activate it. Because when you stand in your truth, you don't just change your life. You ripple across timelines. You awaken generations. You shift the frequency of every room you enter. You are not just here to exist. You are here to lead, to radiate, to reveal. So rise. Rise with full awareness. Rise with spiritual maturity. Rise with joy. Rise with peace. And remember, it was never about being seen by the world. It was about being known by heaven. And heaven never once lost sight of you. You were always the main character. And now, it's your turn to shine. Beloved chosen one, slow down now. Breathe deep. Let your soul receive what your spirit already knew. You were never forgotten. You were never erased. You were simply being shaped, purified, refined in the stillness. The tears you cried in secret, they were caught. The prayers you whispered without words, they were heard. The dreams you buried to survive, they are being resurrected. You are not behind. You are right on time. The divine author has never lost the script. The pages you thought were torn were being rewritten in glory. Every no was a divine redirection. Every betrayal was a hidden blessing. Every delay was a divine pause for preparation. And now the season has shifted. This is not just a new chapter, it's a sacred unveiling. You will walk into rooms you once watched from the shadows. You will speak truths that others are still trying to understand. You will carry peace that can't be copied, a glow that cannot be manufactured, because it is not about status, it is about spirit. and your spirit is ready. If this message resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that subscribe button, like the video, drop a comment below. Share it with someone who needs to hear this, because this is not just content, it's confirmation. This is your reminder, your validation, your divine assignment. Reaffirmed. Walk boldly. Chosen one, God is with you. Heaven surrounds you. You are protected. You are guided. You are needed. And from this moment forward, you are no longer waiting to be written in. You are the story. God bless you.